Hello and welcome to this tutorial on making professional quality maps. In this tutorial, we will talk about how we can create and save professional quality maps for several end user applications and uses. So let's get started. Now, what we are looking at here is an example of a 2D map. We can divide layers in a 2D map into general layers and thematic layers according to how we render it. We can render the general layers by using the layer style function. Thematic layers are enhanced layers that use color symbols and charts, etc. to represent data in a more meaningful way. We can render the thematic layers by using the create thematic function. So these are the steps involved in configuring a map from start to finish. We start off by adding relevant data to a map window, followed by an adjustment of the order of the layers in the layer manager. We then set the general layers style and create a thematic map. The next step is to fix the scales of our map so that we can limit its scale range. We then use mapping for scales to apply conditional viewing to the layers in our map, which means that we define a range according to which our layers are made visible or otherwise. And finally, we save both our map and our workspace. This last step is very important since the map is saved in the workspace, and if we do not save the workspace, the map will not be saved either. So let's talk about the thematic map layer for a moment. Now, a thematic map is an enhanced map according to a particular theme, which is widely used to represent one or more natural or social phenomena. A thematic map uses colors, symbols, charts, and so on to represent a particular theme. Now, it can be divided into two broad categories, which are vector thematic map and grid thematic map. Now, the vector thematic map is further divided into single value thematic maps, segment thematic maps, and label thematic maps, etc. Now, in Supermap, 9 different types of thematic maps are supported, namely unique values map, ranges map, label matrix map, graph map, graduated symbols map, dot density map, grid unique values map, and grid ranges map. Now, these two that you see here are examples of a grid thematic map. Right, so let's move on to the demonstration part of this tutorial. So we're going to start off by talking about the general layers, how they are created, and how we can set their styles. So there are two methods to set a general layer style. The first one is to click on the marker symbol, line symbol, or fills under Style Settings menu and select a proper symbol for the layer. And the second method is to select the layer, right-click on it, and select Layer Style. So let's go ahead into iDesktop and demonstrate this. Right, so here we have our US data source open, and from within this data source, we are going to be using our staged R polygon, and we're going to go ahead and open this right now. And we have this polygon here, and we're going to be adding some more data sets to it. Let's say we're going to add our main cities point data set, and we're going to add our interstates line data set as well. And we are going to go ahead and do some working on these two. So the first thing we will do is that we are going to apply a layer style to the interstates line dataset layer. And to do that, we're going to right click and we're going to say layer style. And here, let's say we want number 44. Yeah, that looks proper. So we're going to leave it at that, and we're going to close this up. Next up is our main cities point layer, and we're going to go under layer style for this one as well. And let's say in order to make these prominent, we are going to change these points to stars so that we know that this particular point on the map is important. So we're going to change the color to red, and maybe we will make it a little bigger. Oh, we can't see it right now, so let's bring this up. Yeah, now we can see them. So let's say we want them a little bigger. Let's disable this layer right now, so now we can see them a bit better. So let's make it a little bit bigger so that we can really see them on the map here. Yeah, that's just fine. Right, so finally we're going to add a layer style to our polygon layer as well. So we're going to say right click, layer style, and we're going to put it up as this one so that we can see the boundaries real proper. And we're going to save this. Right, so the next thing that we want to do is that we want to create a thematic map layer, and that is done by two methods. And the first of which is that we select the layer, we go under the thematic mapping ribbon, and we select thematic map type. The other method is to select the layer, right click on it, and say create thematic map. So we're going to demonstrate this using the second method, and we're going to create a label map first, and then we are going to create a ranges map. So let's go ahead and do these two things. So here we are again. Now we have our polygon layer selected, and we're going to right click on it. We're going to say create thematic map. Now here we will select our label map, and we will say uniform, and we will say OK. Now here what we want to do first of all is that we want to push this right to the top so that we can actually see the names, and we want to make the font a bit clearer and maybe a little bit bigger. So we're going to increase the width a bit, and so that it's a bit bolder, and we're going to increase the size to, let's say, 13, and maybe we will change the font style as well to something more bold, and maybe the alignment should be middle bottom. Yeah, so there we have it. We have created a thematic map that is a label map. So the next one is going to be another thematic map, which will be a ranges map, and we're going to keep it at default, and we're going to say OK. Now here we are going to change a few things. We're going to change the expression first of all. Now before we do this, let's go back to our slides and see what the settings are going to be. So here we are. Now in this thematic map we're going to have 10 ranges, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we will have 10 ranges, and the expression is going to be exactly this, and we're going to change our color scheme to match. So let's go ahead and do that. So what we want to do here is we want to say pop divided by SM area, multiply that by 1,000,000. I'm going to say OK. Now you can either type this out right over here in this text box, or you can open up this drop down menu and go under expression, and you can select your fields that you want in your expression, and you can use some operators as well. But for the sake of ease and simplicity, we have typed it out right here. And now here we're going to change our interval to manual, and we're going to have a maximum of 10 ranges. So we will start changing them to something logical. Let's say we want this at 2, 5, let's say 8, let's say 16, let's say 23, maybe 28, now maybe 38 going up, accelerating a little bit, maybe 45 here, and let's say we want 65 here. So we want to make sure that they are 10. So we have 4, 6, 8, and this one is a bit extra. So we're going to select both of these by holding down the control key, and we're going to right click and say merge. So there we have it. Now what this does for us is that it shows us the population density of the United States, and that could have multiple uses. Right, so let's talk about fixing map scales. We talked about map scales before, and now we're going to go ahead and give our current map a scale. So scales are basically boundaries of a map, how far you can zoom in and how far you can zoom out. So basically we're going to go under map properties, we're going to select bounds, fixed scale, and then we're going to say set scale. Now here we have our map of the United States, and in order to set the scales, we're going to right click anywhere on this blank space, and we're going to say properties in order to bring up our map's properties. And under bounds, we're going to say fixed scale, set scale. We will have these values in here. We will have 4 values. And what we have done here is that we have set the first one to 1 is to 20 million, the second to 10, third to 5, and the fourth to 2.5. So we have essentially halved them. So we're going to see what the effect of this scale is going to be. We're going to say OK. Now this is the maximum that we can zoom out, and this here is the maximum that we can zoom in. So please try to remember this one. And now we're going to change the scale here, both for the upper limit and the lower limit. And we're going to change the upper limit to, let's say 25, and the lower limit to, let's say 2 million. I'm going to say okay. So as you can see that the zoom in level has been increased a bit and the zoom out level has been increased a bit as well. So real quick, going back to our original values of 2.5 million and 20 million. So you will notice the change right away. There we go. That's the maximum zoom out limit that 1:20 million scale gives it. So that is how you set the scales for your map. So we're going to talk about mapping for scales. Now, we're going to be setting two sets of values. The first is going to be the maximum visible scale. So what this does is that it tells the viewer that the current map scale is greater or equal to the given value, and the given value are going to be the values that we give it here. Then the particular layer is not going to be visible. And what the minimum visible scale does is that if the current map scale is smaller than the given value, those being these values right here, the layer will not be visible. So you are effectively setting a range. So let's go ahead and see how that is done. And we're going to go under maps. We're going to say mapping. I'm going to say mapping for scale. Right, so here we have our map that we are working on, and in order to go to mapping for scales, what we're going to do is we are going to go under the maps ribbon, and under mapping we're going to say mapping for scales, which is under advanced mapping. We're going to say mapping for scales. Now here we can manage the visibility of layers according to a minimum or maximum value. So over here where it says maximum, we're going to be selecting our maximum visible scales, and on the left is going to be the minimum visible scale. So we're going to start off with a single demonstration, and we're going to set our minimum and maximum scales for the states R label layer, and we're going to select the minimum visible scale as 1:10 million and the maximum visible scale as 1:2.5. So this is going to be larger since it is maximum, and this is going to be a bit smaller since this is minimum. So let's see what that does. So we're going to say apply, and we're going to say OK. Now, if you remember what we said in the slide, we said that for the maximum values, if the current map scale is greater than or equal to the values that we gave it in the maximum scale, it is going to hide itself. And for the minimum scale, we said that if the current visible scale is smaller than the given values, the layer will be hidden. So let's see if that is happening or not. So here are our scales again. Now, the maximum scale here is 1:2.5, and the minimum is 1:10. Now, at this zoom level of 1:20, which is lower than our minimum visible scale here, the values have been hidden, as you can see. Now, as it goes in and it becomes greater, it's going to be visible. For the maximum scale, if it becomes greater or equal to this value, it is going to be hidden. So we're going to demonstrate that as well. Let's say apply again, and we're going to say OK. So this is a smaller value, so the labels have been hidden. When we go to 10, we can see that the labels are visible again. And at 5 million, it's the same. And when we go down to 2.5, they're hidden again, because at this value, the maximum visible scale comes into effect. So let's go and change that up. We're going to go back into mapping for scale, and we're going to say the maximum visible scale is 5,000. So let's say apply. Now, the labels should be hidden at 5 or greater than that value. So it shouldn't be visible beyond 1:5 million. So let's see if that happens. So not visible, visible. We zoom in. At 5, they're hidden, and they should stay hidden at 2.5. So there we go. That is how minimum and maximums work. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to set some scales for the other layers as well and see how they interact with each other. So back to mapping for scales. Here for the states R polygon, we're going to set the maximum scale as 1:10. And for our point layer, we're going to set it a bit higher at 1:5. And finally, for our interstate lines, we're going to set the minimum visible scale as, let's say, 1:10, so that it goes along with the label. and the maximum visible scale as 1:5. And we're going to change the labels to their original values, that is 1:2.5. So let's say apply and say OK. So at the current scale, that is 1:20 million, all of the conditions are met and all of the layers are hidden. If we zoom into 1:10, we can see that the interstate lines and the labels have become visible. So zooming further into 1:5, we see that the interstate lines go away. The labels are still there, but we have our points now. So if we zoom out, you can see that the points go away at 1:10. Keep an eye on the points here. So they go away at 1:10 and they come back at 1:5. So if we zoom in further into 1:2.5, we see that the names go away, but the points stayed there because the condition is not being met here. So this is how mapping for scales works. So we have something very important to do. We need to save our map and our workspace. Now, a very common mistake that happens here is that people would save the map, but they wouldn't save the workspace. Now, the misconception that is here is that the map is part of your data source, which is not the case. The map, along with the data source, is a part of your workspace. So once you have saved your map, it is really important, if you want to keep your map, that you save your workspace as well. So here we have our map and we're going to say right click, save map as, let's say US2 or US saved, and we're going to say OK. And once we close our workspace here, I'm going to say yes, and it's been closed, and we're going to open our workspace again. And there we have it. Under maps, we have that map saved. Now, if we were to create another map, and let's say we created just a polygon map, and we said save map as, let's say 3, and we're going to say OK. And we say close workspace, and this time we say that we don't want to save the workspace. And once we open the workspace again, we will see that the third map, US3 that we created, has disappeared. So this is something very important to keep in mind. Right, so that's it for today's tutorial on creating professional maps. Please practice what you have seen in this tutorial so that you have a better idea of how to carry out these functions. For more information, you can turn to the help document or you can contact us directly. Thank you.